All right, I have watched the 49ers game back a couple times now, and both times it's more and more astounding. And this is now combined with data from the first three games as well. So a full month's worth of Brock Purdy tape. And it's safe to say that he's leading a wild transformation of the 49ers offense. No Christian McCaffrey for the first month of this season. So the 49ers have shifted things, but it's not just because of that. I think that the longer this goes, the more Brock Purdy's fingerprints are seen on this offense. And he's airing the ball out downfield in ways that not only are different from the style that we saw from Brock Purdy in 2022 and 2023, but are just radically leading the league as far as pushing the ball downfield, deep passes. It's and then the style of Brock Purdy and how he's approaching the pass rush, running around, scrambling behind the line of scrimmage, has completely turned what we had previously seen from him on its head. I talked about this a lot last week. I wrote about it on the San Francisco Standard. The time to throw from Brock Purdy, the average from snap to release, it's actually the longest time to throw in the NFL. It's 3.14 seconds. He passed Jalen Hurts with some of his scrambles and throws in the game on Sunday. And some of them, the most spectacular one, didn't even count. There was the one that he threw the touchdown to Kyle Juszczyk. That was an MVP caliber elite play. Brock Purdy was scrambling to his left. Made me chuckle because I remember after the 2022 season, we were saying, hey, his one weakness is rolling to the left. Well, that's not his weakness anymore. I mean, it took him 7-8 seconds and a few pump fakes as he approached the sideline before he flipped his hips to throw the touchdown pass to Kyle Juszczyk. That inflated the time to throw. And then the play was called back by the illegal shift penalty. Yeah, I think it was an illegal shift, not an illegal formation. So anyway, the end story of all of this right now is that Brock Purdy is one of the most efficient quarterbacks in football again. I mean, we've gotten used to seeing him in the upper right of these graphs. PFF offensive grade is on the x-axis. This is from Kevin Cole. Go and follow him on Twitter. He's got a lot of good data. EPA per play is on the y-axis. So here Purdy is alongside Derek Carr, who had that very hot start to the season under offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak and the New Orleans Saints. Jaden Daniels and Josh Allen have both been really good so far this year, although Allen came back down to earth yesterday. Allen might have been way off this chart before that game against the Ravens. It's Daniels who's truly heating up. And it's going to be really interesting because Daniels got to face the same Arizona Cardinals defense that Brock Purdy is going to face next week. It is not a good Cardinals defense. So I'd expect more success for Brock Purdy moving forward, especially since the 49ers are keeping so many of their offensive weapons healthy. Christian McCaffrey will come back at some point, and we can talk about the lack of Christian McCaffrey out on the field and how that may have affected Brock Purdy's numbers this year, because the wild transformation is exemplified by these statistical ranks. Brock Purdy's average snap to release time, number 2. I think I just said number 1, but it's in the top 2. I think it's still only number 2, not number 1. Still, it's over 3 seconds, which is like prime Russell Wilson. That's how much time that he's buying with his legs behind the line of scrimmage. Brock Purdy is number 2 in average air yards per attempt. The average depth of target for Brock Purdy is 10.6. It's gone 10.6 yards. It's gone from 8.2 to 10.6 yards. 8.2 last season. He ranked in the top half of the league last year, but now he's at the very top, 10.6. Deep passing yards. Well, there are co-leaders in NFL deep passing yards. Here are the 2 co-leaders. 292 deep passing yards for Purdy, 292 deep passing yards for Sam Darnold. That is defined as throws of 20 yards or more in the air. Remember that 97 of the 292 deep passing yards for Sam Darnold came on one play to Justin Jefferson against the 49ers when San Francisco had two safeties covering him. So there's Brock Purdy, presumably explaining to Sam Darnold last year how these two were going to take over the NFL on separate teams in 2024. There's also tight window throws. So, this tells us more about what Purdy's been having to deal with. He's throwing into tight windows at the second highest rate in the entire National Football League. But through it all, Purdy's adjusted net yards per attempt, which is going to include touchdown passes, obviously yards per attempt. It's going to include sack yardage. It also punishes QBs for interceptions. Purdy is number 2 in the NFL to only Josh Allen. The only QB who's been more efficient than Brock Purdy so far this year in adjusted net yards per attempt is right here. It's Allen. Daniels is climbing his way up the list, so we got to keep an eye on the rookie out in Washington. But Purdy is where we've grown used to him being. That is on the top right, despite the fact that he's got a 3.14 second average time from snap to release. Just amazing. So he's scrambling around back there. This is not a quick throw, yak-based offense anymore. It's morphed from a quick throw, yak-based offense into an offense where they're airing it out. Purdy has the most deep attempts in the league. He's got the most deep yardage in the National Football League, and he's also throwing into tighter windows. In fact, Brock Purdy has faced three-man pass rushes 19 times this year. Only Jaden Daniels, who's faced 23 three-man rushes this year, has seen that look more. A three-man rush means that there are 8 men in coverage. So it's a way for defenses to try to cut off deeper passes, to try to cut off passing lanes downfield. Yet Brock Purdy still leads the league in NFL deep passing yards. So there was a throw to Jauan Jennings yesterday. It was one of Jennings' biggest gains, I think his second biggest gain against the New England Patriots. It was a crosser that Purdy delivered perfectly, and it was against the 3-man rush. 8 were back in coverage. You have to be very, very precise to carve up 8 men in coverage, especially against the sound defense like New England's. And technically, they are very sound. I wouldn't say that they have a lot of star players on their defense, although Keon White, 99, was wreaking some havoc up front from multiple positions against the 49ers offensive line. But even then, with a structurally sound defense, it is not supposed to be easy to knife downfield against 8 men in coverage. And Brock Purdy did that on the throw to Jauan Jennings. That was one of the notable plays that I've seen on replay. It was in the first half. I think that it really set a tone as far as what the 49ers offense was going to be able to do, because then later in the second half is when Purdy really started airing it out. You saw Deebo Samuel get behind the cornerback and get behind a flat-footed safety. Of course, you saw Jauan Jennings against great coverage, but it was a perfect throw from Brock Purdy and then a great catch from Jauan Jennings to get it done. That was also in the second half. So the deep attack really, really picked up steam after Purdy hit Jauan Jennings with that 8-man coverage from the New England Patriots. Early on, he thought about going deep to Jennings as well on the deep post, but instead he went underneath the Brandon Ayuk. So the attention that the New England Patriots had to give Jauan Jennings on the deep post actually opened things up for that big gain from Brandon Ayuk. That was 30-plus yards early in the football game. So the average depth of target up from 8.2 to 10.6. Purdy at the top of the league. They're behind only Anthony Richardson, but Richardson's got like a 7 or 8% interception rate. That's gone downhill for the Colts quarterback, who obviously I don't finished the game yesterday. For Purdy, it's only a 1.7% interception rate, which is right where the 49ers would like to have him. He's now under the league average in a good way as far as interception rate goes. He is showing command with the way that he's escaping the pass rush with his scrambles. Most of the pressure problems yesterday actually came against Aaron Banks, who gave up 4 pressures at the left guard position. But I'd be remiss to say that without mentioning that Aaron Banks threw a lot of really, really quality run blocks in this game. But there was the red zone series where Brock Purdy threw 3 touchdown passes Two of them were called back by penalties, but there was one to Jordan Mason and there was one to Kyle Juszczyk. And then finally, he threw that football through triple coverage, but positioned it perfectly for the sensational George Kittle catch. The Juszczyk play before that, and then there was even one more play in that little red zone cluster where Aaron Banks got beaten twice. And Brock Purdy had to scramble around, roll away from trouble to eventually set himself up for the touchdown pass to George Kittle. And those types of plays where he's running around in the backfield, it's no longer a schematic timing play for the 49ers. And we know that Kyle Shanahan loves when the offense plays on time, but he also enjoys having a quarterback who can escape when the structure of the play breaks down, and not only escape, but have the wherewithal, have the mental presence to still keep things organized, even when he's scrambling around frantically in the backfield. And that's exactly what Purdy does. When he steps back, and we saw it with the 2 first down runs early in this game, and he starts running around, I don't think that there's ever a sense watching him that this guy doesn't have the situation under control. He's got his antenna up, so he knows where receivers are supposed to be, where receivers are likely going to start running if it moves into an off-schedule situation. But he's always got that command. I will say that I covered Andrew Luck at Stanford. And Andrew Luck at Stanford was as in command of the proceedings as I've ever seen a quarterback. And this is something that it's really hard to glean from watching on TV. And I'm sure it comes across the TV copy as well. But you've either got to be at the game or you've got to watch the all 22 copy. I've obviously done both of those things here over the course of the last 24 hours. But when I covered Luck at Stanford, the one example that I love to bring up is the Fiesta Bowl when they played Oklahoma State. That was a perfect example of quarterbacking, at least as close as you're going to see. Luck went 27 of 31 with the 4 incompletions being, one was a tipped pick. So it was off of his receiver's hand. So that wasn't Andrew Luck's fault. And the other 3 were intentional throwaways. So it was as close to perfect as you'll ever see from a QB, Andrew Luck, in that football game. And I still remember as that game got into crunch time, every single time that he dropped back, it was actually at the Arizona Cardinal Stadium. I think back then it was University of Phoenix Stadium before it was State Farm Stadium. But every single time that Andrew Luck dropped back, there was this aura. There was this feeling that he had everything under control, that he knew where every single player and every single defender was on the field. So there was this calm that radiated from Luck throughout this entire big stadium. And you could just feel that Stanford was going to be okay with whatever they ran offensively. Unfortunately, they decided to kick a field goal with a freshman at the end of that game instead of just putting the ball into Andrew Luck's hands, because they wouldn't have lost that game if Andrew Luck had continued to have chances because there was no stopping him in that football game. Brock Purdy is radiating that same sense of command that I felt from Andrew Luck in college back in the day. That was 2011 probably. Gosh, that was a long time ago at this point. Purdy, when he drops back, you could sense that he feels what's going on around him, and you could sense that he knows where all 21 other players on the field are. So when he starts running around, it's not this, what the hell is he doing kind of dynamic. It's this, okay, he's buying himself extra time. The defense is probably in trouble when he's running around. For that reason, we can safely say that Brock Purdy is one of the best scramblers in the NFL. Things go off schedule, he figures out a way to get things done. And this statistic right there, 3.14 seconds from snap to release on average, shows you that kind of style. A quarterback who delivered great efficiency with an average snap to release of over 3 seconds was prime Russell Wilson. I see a lot of what Brock Purdy is doing now that's evocative of Russell Wilson's game in his prime. I mean, there were times in this football game, and we saw it going back to last season too. We saw it going back to 2022 as well. But there were times in this game where there was a defender, a blitzing defender, draped over Brock Purdy's back, and Purdy somehow was able to wrestle his way out of it, and then he would sprint out and create a positive gain. Most famously, that happened in the NFC Championship when the Lions blitzed with their cornerback and Brock Purdy was able to throw the blitzer off of his back, roll to his left, and find Kyle Juszczyk near the sideline. So just the ability to create outside of the structure, even when, crap hits the fan for the 49ers, that's been so huge because they have allowed pressure. I don't think that pass protection is one of the 49ers strengths. I don't think it's been terrible. But there was pressure that definitely came in against the interior, which in most cases is the toughest pressure for a quarterback to contend with, because if a defensive tackle wins against the guard or a center, he's got about 3 or 4 strides at most to get to the quarterback. If a tackle loses, well, it could take 8 or 9 strides to reach the quarterback, especially if a defense is lined up at more of a wide 9. So pressure up the gut is lethal to most NFL quarterbacks, but it's not lethal to Brock Purdy. But then, on top of that, we've got to talk about just the throws, the difficulty that's happening downfield from Brock Purdy. The depth of target is up from 8.2 to 10.6. Again, this is the stylistic revolution that I've been talking about. The 49ers typically lead the NFL in yards after the catch. That's what I wrote about for the San Francisco Standard last week. And this year, they're at the bottom in yards after the catch. In fact, the yak that the 49ers are generating this year would be an NFL low since this started being measured in 2000 at this pace. I'm sure that the 49ers will see that number go back up toward the old average when Christian McCaffrey returns and as defenses try to adjust against what Brock Purdy is doing to them on some of these deep passes. But right now, the 49ers are not focused on generating yak for a number of reasons that I've gone through over the course of the past week. Instead, they're airing it out deep into tight windows because Brock Purdy is good enough to do that. Again, air yards, number 2. Deep pass yards, number 1. Tight window throws, number 2. The yak number would have looked a lot better had the officials not thrown the bad holding penalty against George Kittle on the Jordan Mason touchdown. That was a nice angle route, catch and run from Mason out of the backfield. That was obviously robbed of some statistical yak yardage because of that penalty. So that probably would have started a trend in a different direction. But the bottom line is that the yak still ranks number 32 for the 49ers after years and years of ranking number 1. That's actually, I could take you guys to the San Francisco Standard. I've got a collection of articles there now. The new place of work, I've worked my way in. It's been over a week at this point. So this is what I wrote yesterday to turn around the 49ers defense, Fred Warner and Nick Bosa to get vocal. The link is in the description, so you should go ahead and check that out. But we can go to my page here and we could see what I wrote last week. And this is, it ended up living up to the headline. This is from before the Patriots game. The 49ers offense is already clicking. 2 big weapons may give it another boost. Look at this. To me, this is the most staggering statistic from this season so far when we are looking at how the 49ers offense is stylistically operating. Every single year, except for 2022, prior to this one, they're number 1 in yards after the catch per completion. Number 1 in 2018, number 1 in 19, number 1 in 2020, number 1 in 2021, number 3 in 2022, but almost number 1. They're 0.1 yards away from the top spot. Number 1 in 2023. Then they plummet to number 32, from 1 to 32, from first to dead last, from 2023 to 2024. So they stop focusing on the yak, and the wild transformation leads to the number 1 spot in deep passing yards. It goes from facilitating yards after the catch with short and intermediate throws to airing it out at the highest rate in the NFL and doing so successfully. It goes from lower percentage of tight window throws to an extremely high percentage of tight window throws. Over 23% of Brock Purdy's throws have gone into a tight window. Now, personnel is a huge part of this. But again, it's not all of it, because you go back to this and you look at 2018, they also led the league. They had their highest level of yak in 2018, and that was before they had elite personnel. So you could talk about them losing Kittle and losing Samuel and obviously losing Christian McCaffrey, losing high efficiency Brandon Ayuk. Ayuk has not been nearly as good as his pre-contract version. You can talk about all of that, but then you look at 2018 when Dante Pettis was the 49ers leading receiver, and yak was also off the charts in that year. So the 2024 drop in yak and move to the deep game from Brock Purdy has not been all personnel driven from the 49ers. I think it's been more defense driven. We talk about the 8-man coverages that the 49ers are facing, the respect that Brock Purdy is getting. When teams are dropping so many DBs into coverage, they're saying, hey, we're going to give up some yardage to Purdy, but we just don't want to get completely gashed over the top, right? They're playing more of a prevent defense against the 49ers. Despite that, Purdy has decided that I'm going to attack downfield anyway. I'm going to run around if I need to find an open guy downfield, let guys separate it anyway, and I'm going to win that way. And that's exactly what he's done, which is why it's so remarkable that he's leading the league in passing yardage, despite the fact that this yak is number 32. This has turned into a yak-based league, but Brock Purdy is throwing back the clock back to the Air Coryell years with the San Diego Chargers. Those guys were, with Dan Fouts, were throwing the ball far downfield, and Brock Purdy is now leading the league in that regard. Now, the difference between Purdy and maybe somebody like Josh Allen, who's also been known to air it out and also been known to be efficient that way and throw the ball far downfield, is that the 49ers have the league's now second leading rusher. Derrick Henry passed Jordan Mason yesterday. But take a look at this. This is rushing yards over expectation. There are only 3 NFL running backs with more than 100 yards over expectation from NFL Next Gen Stats. Derrick Henry, plus 185, is one of them. Saquon Barkley, plus 156, is another one of them. And Jordan Mason is third at plus 120. So what the 49ers have is the top quarterback in passing yardage, who's airing it out in a way that I don't think any of us saw coming this year, just because it's been such a stylistic 180-degree difference than years prior. Then they have the top rusher in the league in Jordan Mason. And they also have Jawan Jennings with absurd efficiency at the receiving position. Jennings is number 3 in receiving yardage, but he's at 4 yards per route run, which is number 1 in the league. And Jennings also leads the entire NFL in expected points added from the receiver position. It's Jennings at number 1, Khalil Shakir from the Bills at number 2, and Justin Jefferson, who we all know is the best receiver in the game, at number 3. But the connection between Jennings and Purdy has been special, and it's led the 49ers to have a 7th-round pick leading the league in passing yardage, a 7th-round pick leading the league in receiving efficiency, and an undrafted free agent in Jordan Mason leading the NFL in rushing yardage. Truly exceptional numbers from the 49ers offense, not just stylistically, but also from a production standpoint. So we've seen them turn everything on its head early this year. And I don't think the sample size is small enough to disregard at this point. They've played a month of football. They've played 4 games already, and this is where we stand. And ultimately, no matter how you get there, you want to be on the top right as a cornerback, as a quarterback. And Brock Purdy is on that top right as a quarterback. Means his offensive grade is great. His expected points added per play are great. And I think it's only going to move further up and further to the right. Next week, he plays an Arizona defense that hasn't been good. Then he gets to play Seattle on a short week. We'll see how he does against the Mike McDonald defense. That's obviously the same coach who was the coordinator of the Ravens last year, who seemed to flummox the 49ers, and they did force a lot of takeaways. That's going to be a big, big test for the 49ers on Thursday night in Seattle. In fact, I think these next 2 games have a chance to really set the tone for the season. I look at September as the warm-up period for an NFL year. Now the 49ers are, hopefully for them, they're getting all the kinks out, and they play two of the division opponents over the course of the next week and a half. First, the Cardinals, and then a few days after that, the Seattle Seahawks on the road. And if Purdy continues producing the way that he has produced, he's going to be, I think, by a sizable margin. And maybe him and Jaden Daniels, see how Daniels continues to play. But I think Purdy is going to have that top spot in NFL efficiency. Is second in adjusted net yards per attempt right now, behind only Josh Allen, who started trending in the wrong direction yesterday. But as a team, the 49ers are going to be on the inside track if they could win these next two games. When you talk about the NFC West race and the NFC race and just overall vibes and overall momentum heading into the late part of October and then November, where the 49ers have historically turned up the Jets. We could talk a little bit about the 49ers defense. I wrote about them yesterday on the Standard. Again, we can go back to the Standard. This is the article that is in the description over on YouTube if you want to head over there. But this was pregame, then postgame. We talked about the three meetings that the 49ers held yesterday to get their defense into the position that it finished at against the New England Patriots. It helped to face a bad offense, but Nick Bosa talking to the team on Saturday night, saying that he believed in those defensive linemen, even though they had lost some personnel through the triceps tear of Javon Hargrave. The meeting from Fred Warner before the game, which I have a video of right here, you could check out on that article on the Standard. And then the ball meeting, the turnover meeting that Brandon Staley now runs. It really appeared that the 49ers took it to heart yesterday with what they did in this football game. But Nick Bosa's get off right here, NFL Next Gen Stats featured that. And I watched the tape this morning, as I said a couple times, and that popped off to me on both viewings, was the way that Nick Bosa was coming off the line. I think that the 49ers pass rush just feels such a boost of confidence whenever they're stopping the run and they're not having to think about a defense or an offense running at their defense. I think that was definitely the case for the 49ers yesterday, and Bosa was all over it. 0.51 second pass rush get off on average over his 32 get offs yesterday, pass rushing snaps. That was the quickest by a defender in a game over the last 7 seasons, measured by NFL Next Gen Stats. So Bosa finally got the sack that he was looking for there at the end of the game with a strip sack, but the effort was relentless. Remember, entering this football game, Nick Bosa told us that he was having trouble sleeping at night because he was so upset about the loss the week prior. Well, he's certainly got the 49ers pass rush rallied and ready to go for this game. You know who else has been really good for San Francisco this year, and I don't think he's getting enough credit for it, is Leonard Floyd. Bosa had 7 pressures. Floyd had 6 in this game. I know NFL Next Gen Stats said 9 pressures. I'm just going off the PFF numbers. The definition of a pressure and the interpretation of a pressure varies a little bit from source to source, but Bosa had 7. I know he faces a lot of double teams. Floyd doesn't face quite as many, but he's top 10 right now in NFL pressure rate. And yesterday he was at the quarterback a lot. In fact, the Fred Warner pick 6 yesterday for the 49ers doesn't happen without Leonard Floyd working relentlessly to get into Jacoby Brissett's face. So between the Bosa and Floyd pressures and then a lot of the 49ers interior pressures, I think that you had a very, very balanced pass rushing effort. Collins had 3. Yetur Gross-Matos had 2. Kevin Givens had 2.5 pressures, 2.5 sacks. Sam Okawanu had 1 pressure. That was on a big hit against Jacoby Brissett. I thought that was a good pass rush. And to Brissett's credit, that was the one that he completed to the sideline against Deommodore Lenoir when he got hit. But Okawanu, over his 10 snaps, he was really, really good for the 49ers yesterday. And Evan Anderson got a pressure for San Francisco as well in his NFL debut. In fact, you know, the Sam Okawanu story is so awesome. And I was able to write about it within this Fred Warner article. I mean, we talk about Fred Warner, we talk about Bosa. Those are the 49ers stars, but it's going to be about the depth on top of what the star players did. And just have a listen to the adversity that Sam Okawanu's overcome. And if you want to read a little bit more about this, I got to feature it a lot in the article. But this is from the locker room with Sam Okawanu, one of the 49ers defensive heroes yesterday against the Patriots.
And my whole life really been adversity. Shit, I grew up in Liberia, west coast of Africa. I was born during the Civil War out there. Me and my mom migrated to America at the age of 12. Started playing football my senior year in high school, man. Went to a couple of junior colleges because I was fresh to the game. You know, I'm very new to football. I'm still learning the game of football, man. And shit, got to Maryland, had to wait. And then even coming out the league, man, I feel like I should have been a draft pick, but shit, God had other plans for me, man. So, and then getting signed to Tennessee and getting cut and being here and just kind of grinding my way through the rotation. But I love it all, man, because at the end of the day, it makes a great story, man. And I'm the guy who kind of pride himself on facing things hard on and just head on and just, you know, attacking the adversity, man, because come out the other side, he was victorious.
Victorious on the other side, that's for sure. Yesterday, the 49ers were victorious against the Patriots. So if you want to read more of that, that's what it's all about, right? When you've got guys who have been grinding, obviously a hell of a journey for Sam Okawanu. Yesterday really embodied what the 49ers were about on that day against the Patriots defensively, but what they're going to have to be about defensively to turn this thing around for the long term. And Fred Warner had the best quote, I thought, and I finished the article with it. You can check it out right here. Somebody asked him about, you know, how much of a burden is it to try to help the defense cohesively come together with so many new faces, because yesterday they had a lot of new guys out there because of the injuries and obviously because of roster turnover over the offseason. And Warner said, it's not a burden, it's an opportunity. I was excited from the moment we got all the new guys that we did this offseason because of what they bring to our team and to the defense. The opportunity is to continue to build cohesion and chemistry amongst the group. I think the best teams are the ones that are the closest. I know that doesn't happen overnight. We've got to continue to try to find that closeness as a team, as a defense. And I feel the more we do that, the better we're going to play and the better product we're going to put on the field. Yesterday was a step in the right direction, undoubtedly, for the 49ers. All right, so a couple other things I noticed yesterday. Expanding DB depth for the 49ers. 23 snaps in this game for Renardo Green versus only 15 for Isaac Yiadom. Now, Yiadom was good yesterday. Yiadom had a very important early third down pass breakup. Didn't really see him get beat for the 49ers. He graded out better than the rookie Renardo Green, but you look at it at linebacker, where the second-year man D. Winters has been getting worked into the mix for the 49ers. You definitely see it at safety, where Malik Mustafa, the rookie, got a start yesterday after getting worked in during week 2 against Minnesota. The 49ers need this rookie class to step up, to give them the quality depth that allows a team to keep on churning through these marathons. And the latest inductee into that mix for the 49ers was Renardo Green. We're going to watch that development as far as snap counts go as this season progresses. A few other notes I had from watching this 49ers game yesterday. I thought that Devondre Campbell set a good tone against the run for the 49ers. He had a run blitz on the very first play of the game with Ramondre Stevenson on the other side. And Devondre Campbell is all over that run blitz. Sometimes, you know, just finding the hole, angling your body, penetrating through that line is a lot easier said than it is done. And Devondre Campbell's big stop on first down, that was a good way to stop the bleeding for the 49ers, because they had really struggled against the run over the 2 weeks prior to this game. Now, I saw somebody trying to criticize Malik Mustafa for his missed tackle. And it's like, dude, why don't you try to play in the NFL? It's ridiculous. This was Mustafa's first career NFL start. I talked to him after the game. He said, yeah, there's some nerves at play. He was upset with himself for missing the first tackle there around the edge. I think it was Ramondre Stevenson that was able to get around him. Big deal. I mean, unless it happens again, you chalk it up to nerves. These guys are not robots. And I think that, you know, the players deserve the discourse to be a little bit, you know, have a little bit more humanity behind it. You can't just go out and run your mouth and say, oh yeah, he shouldn't have missed that tackle. I'm so worried about that. It was his first NFL drive as a starter. And then we saw on the interception return, we saw Malik Mustafa pancake a guy twice his size, a Patriots offensive lineman. Brad Graham has a great video of that at the SF Niners. Go ahead and check out his page. He was able to kind of zoom in on that part of it. The bottom line is that Malik Mustafa is a human bowling ball, and the 49ers defense should benefit a lot from that. He was a Swiss Army knife for Wake Forest defense last year. And he's earned a starting position, at least when Talanoa Hufanga's out now for the 49ers secondary. He's going to be an important part of this football team. I thought it was a good debut for Malik Mustafa, although he's going to lose some sleep over not catching that interception. It was a fastball, though, from Jacoby Brissett. But to be dogging him for the missed tackle on the first drive, in his initial NFL starting experience before he had a chance to settle into the game, unless it's a recurring issue for Malik Mustafa, that's not what you should be focusing on. Just not the right way to analyze the game. Then I talked about the Jawan Jennings crosser against the 3-man rush or against the 8-man coverage. That was a huge play in this game that really illustrated what Brock Purdy is doing right now. And it's borderline unprecedented. He is attacking 8-man coverages downfield at a league leading level. And he's not just shying away and going underneath against 8-man coverages. He is throwing his way through defenses that are showing him respect. And that to me is amazing. And Jawan Jennings has been a big part of that. We're going to get injury updates a little bit later today on Fred Warner and Jordan Elliott. Those are going to be important injury updates for the 49ers. So be ready for those in a couple hours. But I did see, Jordan Elliott early on had a really nice run stop. He was pushing guys into the backfield. He's an important piece. I think the fear would be like an MCL or something that keeps him out for at least 4 weeks. It would make it tough for that 49ers interior. They played really well yesterday. They got great fill-in performances. Hell, maybe even line Nick Bosa up over an interior lineman at some point if you start getting really thin there. But I know the 49ers would prefer to keep it the way that it worked yesterday with Bosa at the edge. So we'll see what moves they're going to make. Most pressures given up by the 49ers offensive line came against left guard yesterday against Aaron Banks. He gave up those 4 pressures. And I watched again, Malik Collins, there was a 2-play stretch there where he took over the game. A couple monstrous pressures over right guard for the 49ers. Also, really, really nice run stop from D. Winters. We talked about Fred Warner missing the second half. Well, D got some playing time as the third linebacker. I thought Devondre Campbell upheld the standard for the 49ers. The San Francisco standard's up on the screen. Somebody was joking, did you get Devondre Campbell to pay you for the quote that he gave you in his article? Let's look at it right here. For the record, no, Devondre Campbell did not pay me for this quote, but it's a good one that seems to indicate that Devondre Campbell reads the San Francisco Standard, which you can check out. Look at this. We know what the standard is, Devondre Campbell said. The standard is the standard. No matter who's out there, you're expected to play hard, play smart, and do the right thing. Fred set the standard. All we try to do is uphold it. It's a good finish. I have to go eat lunch. We'll talk to everybody really soon.